Welcome to Late Night Riders. I'm joined by my mom, Kristen, and my grandma, Debbie. And today we're going to talk a little bit about our future plans at Ramm.
We're excited.
We are. We're talking about building another barn. So we wanted to share with you our thoughts of what we're going to be doing in the process of what we'll be taking when we build the barn. So we're probably at least a year out on it, but we do our homework just like everybody else. We're horse owners just like you are, and we're trying to put all of our ducks in a row so that we make sure that we don't miss everything. Get that barn built, and you're like, oh, wish I would have done this. So the planning stages are the best, and that's what we do with all of our customers is the planning. So we understand what you go through. So anyway, we're talking about the barn.
Go ahead.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you did in the meantime? We currently don't have a barn, so
We don't have a
what
barn.
were some of the things that you did, knowing that eventually you would be putting in a barn?
So we're in a kind of a transitional stage, of going from a move to actually getting the barn. And so we decided at our office right at Ramm Fence and Stalls that we would put up our portable stalls that we have and use those for outside sheds. They're solid. They're such a good stall. We built around the stall itself and put a roof on it, and our son did that. Did a lot of work to put it together, but it came together very nicely. And the horses have in and outs. Basically what I call an in and out is a shed that they can go in and out of. And last year they were outside and they fared really, really well with the sheds. We had a unbelievably cold winter that the drop was really cold for a while. I don't know, it was one of our coldest drops that we've had, and they did fine.
We're
with
supposed
it.
to have another one. I would say even going back though, what we've come from. So when we actually were growing up, we had a barn that my grandparents had built
Before we were
right?
ever
your
into
mom
any
and
of this.
dad. Your
Yeah.
mom and dad built. And we had a couple horses and an acre, but we had trails that were behind the house, and we would ride the trails. And each of us had ridden to our school because we both went to the same school. You and I did.
Elementary school.
Yep.
It's second generation. Yep.
And then we moved out to Ramm Road, where we had an arena. We had big major stalls for us, which was a big deal. And it was an indoor barn. We never had anything like that with 20 acres. And that was where we really took off with our riding. We went from Western, and our neighbor was a fox hunter, and she taught us how to ride English. And I know for Mindy and I, we rode English, and we never went back to Western. And you, for the most part, did too. But you could ride either way because you'd ridden for so long. And then you moved
too. We drove the horses.
You had Fred and the big carriage, and you would do parades and all sorts of things. So those were fun times, and that was friends down the road. It seemed like everybody had horses, so everybody would come over. We would all ride. We'd do the fox hunting thing. We'd drive an hour into close to Ann Arbor, Michigan, where they had Waterloo Hunt Club, and that was the best
We
time.
loved being in the hunt club. Yeah. It was wonderful, and we learned a lot by riding with that group, and additionally being in that area right there taught us a lot because we did transition from the Western to the English and loved that. And then we boarded horses at the time too. We had a lot of people at the farm and learned a lot about all kinds of different horses at that time. Even foaling next door, Mary had foals, and
we had one at our house too.
We did a lot with foaling and that type of thing. So
so we had this really awesome arena there, but we felt like it was too small, just a little too small. What was it?
I think it was, I want to say, if I recall, it wasn't 60.
Are you sure?
Foot wide. I don't think.
Maybe
it was
60 by 180.
It was 60 by 120. It wasn't as long. Yeah, it was a little smaller, but we had actually a person that was at our barn too that had youth riders, and she would do her lessons in there, and it worked out fine. A little tighter than what probably a lot of people, maybe we would even like today, but that size worked out really well. And I would just say that if you're thinking about doing an indoor, just to kind of interject and say this, that gave us plenty of room to ride if you were going to be setting up jumps and that type of thing, you probably want it to be nicer to have it not be quite so tight on the turns, but you could do a lot in that indoor. So it was wonderful. It was
And
really
boy,
wonderful.
did we ever.
Yeah.
That's where I took your dad on his very first horse ride, made him go over a jump.
You want
Didn't
to
know how to
hear
ride. Didn't know how to ride. She put him on a horse.
if
and
you want to
said,
hear
"Hold
that
on, go
full
over a jump."
story,
Yeah.
watch our first episode,
Yeah.
Ramley.
Yeah. So everybody
And
learned how to ride.
Yeah. So then we all kind of picked up and moved out an hour west of here. And we...
Would you say that was your dream barn?
Which one? The Ramm Road?
Mm-mm.
The
In Bryan.
In Bryan?
It was the barn was beautiful that we built. It was lovely, and it was very functional. Might sound funny, but it was actually a little too big.
It was way too big.
It was a little too big.
Yeah.
And so it was a 12-stall barn.
But when we first moved out there was a pole barn, and you put the portables in
Oh yeah.
before we even, and everything had to be
They're
fenced in
solid.
because it was all open land.
The thing that's so nice about it, we had from a pony to a draft horse in those stalls, and you can take them apart. Yes, they can be portable, but they're built so strongly that they can be used as a solid stall, and they're great for an open span barn. And so this was a pole bar building with no supports in it, so it was open span. So we put the portable stalls in there.
So we went from everything at Ramm being like generously sized, from 1 acre to 20 acres, and everything really nice and tidy, to completely open.
I can't
Everything
remember
was
how many acres
open.
we had there. It was
You
quite
had-
a few acres.
You had over 100 acres. So
I thought we were up to 150 at that time, but then we had
And a lot of it
farming
was
done
woods
too,
and farming and-
right,
right.
exactly, right. So that was open, and typically where we lived in Bryan, we didn't realize, but it was very, very windy there. They say Chicago's the windy city. Well, Bryan,
not
Bryan,
anything like Bryan.
extremely windy, a lot of
Yeah.
farmland and open areas. So the indoor came in really handy because we did love to ride in the woods and so forth, but the big open areas were just...
But you had to build the indoor. First, you built like an outdoor shed. I remember that. The girls were so little that...
Still have the shed.
Yeah, we do.
We built it as a family together. Everybody, Paul,
Yeah.
I can't remember who all was there, Mike, you, the little girls, and I don't know who else was
We were
there,
inside more
actually.
than
Could
we
have been
were
Mikey
out.
too.
I feel like
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, you guys were pretty little when they did that. So that was kind of,
I think we
you guys
laid
had built...
a coat in the corner of the shed as we were building it so they could lay down and take a nap even. Yeah, it was so cute.
Was that the one where we took the
that
photo?
picture.
Yeah, okay.
Your,
so I
your
do
special
remember.
picture,
Yeah.
your special photo, that was it. So we built a shed, and the shed is a big shed, and learned from that shed that you need to put anchors on your sheds because of the windy city in Bryan. It blew over once, which is terrible to say. But anyway, we learned that, we picked it back up, anchored
We've learned
it.
a lot.
We've learned a lot. And then actually moved it here. It's actually at our Ramm Fence and Stalls facility now for our horses that they go into. Our bigger horses go into that
So
one.
after we built all of that, built the fence, on this big land, and the pastures were just huge. So even trying to ride in a pasture got scary. We kind of went through a period of time where we had some new horses, and they were a little unsettled. We were
Green horses.
we were a little
Green
unsettled
horses.
and got a little like we needed an arena, we needed a barn, and so your papa and your dad went into designing this barn.
Oh, he went into designing it, all right.
In design mode.
Yeah.
and if it's not, after being in the barn that we were in at Ramm, he was like, well, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it right this time. So
Yes.
he went
He was a
way
shaker
over.
and a mover.
He was.
Shaker and a mover went way overboard. But we had characteristics and things from that I'll never forget that we'd like to apply and put into the next barn. So the barn was beautiful. The thing about it was that he made sure that the barn was open at the end so that when the wind came through, the wind would come through the barn so that the horses had great ventilation. That was a big thing. We wanted to be sure that there was air movement. At our other barn, originally on Ramm Road, yes, there was air movement, but it wasn't the indoor wasn't situated so that the wind blew through it, so there wasn't a lot of air movement, and we knew we wanted that. So you can use what you have, God-given elements to make that barn work and be nice for you. So he situated so that the wind could come through. We wanted it was kind of like built like a T, basically. The stalls were out in front, the indoor went the opposite direction in the back of it, and the aisleway was large. We had a larger aisleway than normal so that a tractor could go down it or make not a complete turn, but so that we weren't banging into stalls, because that's another thing. You have people that maybe you work in your aisleway or whatever, you get your stalls in, and then people are hitting the stalls with the equipment and so forth.
And that was nice. The barn that he designed, that part of it was
open span.
It really was awesome.
It was beautiful.
And what the elements that we did put in there, which we'll talk about, were awesome. One thing that we did find, and this is why we research everything and have done things and know that we need different plans, is we had done stamped concrete in there, and the horses just slid all over that stamped concrete. And now we know pavers are so much more gentle for the horses and for us as well, because it was a little scary walking them in and out when it would get damp in there.
And it was something that we just had to be careful with, because the dew in the morning on the concrete would make it a bit slippery, and everybody knows that. But we felt with it being stamped, and it was colored stamped, it looked like cobblestone. It was beautiful. But on the same hand, we learned that we needed to rough up the surface, and wasn't quite as bad, but the pavers, of course, are going to be your ultimate so that horses don't slip or slide or whatever. And that was a really nice feature.
So the things that we are talking about when we start talking about the new barn and what we would like to do, what we think were the most awesome things, is the way that he had designed that open design for the airflow, and then we had the fans.
We had overhead fans that were above each of the stalls. We had bright lighting that we have.
Nobleman stalls.
The lighting resembles the actual daylight. Nobleman stalls. I wanted just straight nobleman stalls, but we also had the round ornate tops on top that were beautiful. The gold tops. It's just pretty. And then the windows that we had windows in each stall, and they each had a Dutch door that there was a overhang, a porch that was outside on both sides of the stalls, but the horses, we could open the doors and they could put their heads out if they wanted to, but it wasn't mainly made to take horses in and out. We didn't have anything connected to it in the way of paddocks, because those small paddocks that you put, which we call in and out paddocks, are really super high traffic areas. And I'll tell you what, there's not a whole lot that you can put up that the horses aren't going to, in a short period of time, abuse that, unless you have very quiet horses or horses that are maybe recuperating, something like that. But so the doors were more functional to let the air through and so forth. The windows that we had are the windows that we, with our window grills and so forth, that we have here. We also made sure that there was the material that we use inside of the windows was, trying to think of the material of what you call it, but it's actually something that was wipeable. All the window sills could be wiped out, and not like vinyl, but that was something that we did, though, that made the windows clean. You could clean them very easily. We could dust everything, make sure everything was clean. The ledges were tried to eliminate as many ledges as we could so that the dust didn't hang on the ledges and that type of thing.
And if anybody knows Debbie Disbrow, they will know that she has a very clean barn, and that anybody who goes,
we wanted anybody
who takes care of the barn.
Clean.
No, you are very clean.
But Laura, who used to work at our barn, might, if she were here, she might say, well, yeah, we had to keep it clean, because we did have barn cleaning days, and we would clean everything.
Everything was clean, but we would re-clean.
Barns get dusty, and I just wanted to keep it clean.
No, we did, and it was very pretty.
Yeah, it was. And when people came, we had clinics, we had clinicians that came and so forth, and, we wanted it to be nice for the people that came.
And the thoroughbred stalls that we had, when you had the clinics, people were amazed how the horses handled those, like how they felt at the end of the day. They've been worked, and then they went in and they were so well rested after they had been on the thoroughbeds.
Thoroughbeds are just wonderful. We had, again, from minis, ponies, horses to draft horses that were in the stalls from all different age brackets, and the thoroughbeds they are wonderful. I cannot wait to have them again. And just so soft for the horses. They lay down more. We had people that came in with horses that were sport horses that said that their horses actually rested and slept. Attitudes were better with the horses. People's attitudes with their horses were better because their horses were better. So it made for a really good match. So
I think the biggest effect that it had was on our draft horse,
goodness.
who, as he got older, it was harder for him to walk around, and we would do the night turnouts, bring him in. The fans would be on, the wind would be coming through, like a breeze would be coming through.
It's very pleasant.
You don't have to
Very
use many
peaceful.
shavings. It was so easy to clean. And then he would lay down and he would snore. And I have videos of him snoring. He was so cute. And he had not done that before. I mean, with
would just
any of
rest.
the other stalls that
They
we had him in.
rested. It was really cute because for a time we had our other side of our barn. We had an area where we had like a viewing area, and we had a kind of like a living area. So we also used that as a office at one point, and we had people in and out of the office. So like 10 o'clock in the morning, I don't know why, they all wanted to take their naps, and we'd kind of tiptoe into the barn from the living area and just stand and listen. And you could hear all these little snores from the stalls. It was really, really cute. And they just simply lay down. I mean, you could walk down the aisle quietly and nobody even raised their heads. It was cute. So everybody got rest. And that was really, really nice in the barn. The other thing that I really liked was that we had waters in the stalls. I can tell people, too, that if you're wondering about waters, because people want to be able to know how much water the horses drink. You can put gauges on your waters to see how much water the horses consume or drink during the day. We had those in our stalls, and then each water line to each individual stall, we had a cutoff switch in like a back area behind the stalls where all of the water lines came together. And that was such a good thing, because if something happened where you needed to work on one of the waters, or horses weren't in that particular stall, you could just take that handle. They were numbered per stall. There were 12, and you could just take that handle and shut it off and easily turn off the water to that stall. So, for example, even people with stalls that are barns that are smaller, if they are connected to your house water line, let's just say, and something happens where a water line breaks. We were notorious for having water lines break always at Thanksgiving.
Yes, Thanksgiving.
For some reason. I don't know why. But anyway, at the house. And so
Not just
anyway,
once, but multiple times when we're trying to make
this
Thanksgiving
was on
dinner.
Ramm Road. This was on Ramm Road. This was really funny because we always had big dinners too, and served our whole family. So, but we learned our lesson, and we put those water shut-offs on. I would just say that's another thing that I would do per each stall, and then a shut-off from the barn to the house too. You don't have to shut everything down to repair your water. You don't want to be down for a day or even part of a day, let alone longer. So that was a really good thing. Electricity wise too, the other thing that we wanted to do, which some people may say it's a bit much, and I know it's more, but all of our electrical lines were run through conduit. We wanted to be sure that we eliminated any chance of fire, and that was a really big thing. Barn fires are huge. You need to check your electric in your barns if they're older. Fortunately, we never had any problems with our barn on Ramm Road, but we did check make sure that we did do that with our electrical lines, and it's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to have that, so that you know that everything's secured, nothing gets chewed into by mice or anything like that, or over time wears out. It's all in the conduit.
Did you like your tack room?
Love the tack room. Yeah. We had a tack room too that was large enough that when we had a clinic, we could have a table with the people in it and be around the table with our tack. in the tack room. And then we also had an area that was nice for a sink for being able to wash tack, clean tack, and being able to hang it while we worked on it. And at that time too, we did have a washer and dryer.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's a luxury to me.
That was luxury.
It was a luxury, but we did have that washer and dryer, so we could wash blankets, wash any of our towels, anything that we needed for the horses. So saddle pads, it was all in that washer and that dryer, which helped a lot, and we used it.
So speaking of just the tack room, like I have seen now that we have the Instagram and all of those things to look at, or Pinterest, I have seen so many cool tack rooms. Do you think that you would change that tack room at all, like when we go to redo this one?
I always wanted. We've talked about this before, though. We've seen these really neat ways to put your saddle on a rack, or maybe even like, I don't want to say cubbies. I don't know. You know better than I do, Kristen. But they're almost like little individual places to put your tack in, your bridle, that type of thing. Like I would like to look at that. It's always budget, like everybody else. You need to look at the budget. We saw something that was really, really interesting, though, the other day. We saw it looked like a library, the library card drawers that pulled out, that had like a drawer pulled out of the wall, and the saddle sat on top of that.
Yep.
And then when you were done, you could push that back in.
Yeah, that's cool.
So you'd have to have something where it was, I'm not sure how it would be built, but anyway, we saw that you could push that back in so that when the saddle wasn't there, you had a flatter space on your wall. Of course, there are drop-down saddle racks and things like that you could use. You wouldn't have to go to that extreme. But it was pretty. It was something that was different, and I thought that was pretty neat.
You like the classic darker colors?
I'm old school. I'm an old school girl.
I like the white and bright colors, but I would be afraid to do that in a barn, like where we would have to continually. I mean, you can see every little dirt spot on there, and so
Kristen's up with
in a
everything.
Debbie
I'm old school,
in a Debbie
classic.
Disborough barn, we would not do that because we would be washing the
Old school
walls all the time.
I posted a tack room, like different ideas for tack rooms, and a lot of them were white, and it was on our Facebook page. And I got so many comments saying, "Why would you put white in a tack room?"
Yeah, and I agree with that. They're very pretty to look at, and if you can do that and you have the time to do that, I think And we still keep everything extremely clean, but we will have a Pinterest board or a mood board for when we go to build all of this, and I'm excited to see where everybody's ideas come from and what colors we choose. One thing that was brand new to us, we had a couple things that were brand new to us at the barn, but the wash stalls, those were so nice, weren't they? We never had that before. It was very nice.
And I'll say too, the tack room, we did have the pine walls that were beautiful, because we got the knotty pine, but it was beautiful in that room. So I still like that. That's me. Okay, so back to the wash stalls now.
Everything was knotty pine. The whole thing was
pine.
It was any of the pictures that you see in our advertising from the Nobleman's. We have newer pictures, but it was very pretty. But it was all, the whole thing was
pine. Yeah. So the wash down stalls were great, because we put in a wash down area, 2 wash down stalls with the drain in the floor. So the floors were slightly angled downward, not tremendous amount, but then we had our wash down mats that were in those areas, and we did have a window that was also had the grill work that went over the top of it. The grill work was hinged, so we could we could take it from the top and pull it down. We'd clean out the windows if we wanted to, and then put that back up so the horses couldn't push on the windows at all. But the light came in, which was nice. But we had overhead lighting as well, and I'm trying to remember. We did have, I don't think we had did we get the overhead? I'm trying to think.
No.
We didn't have the overhead sprayers, but in this barn, I would like to have maybe an overhead sprayer, possibly, to have that out of the way so that you can work around your horse and, check those out and see
and
what
the
they're
lighting
like.
that they put on the sides now, that so you can see if there's something that is wrong with the horses and you're checking on something. I like that we have those lights now that are available.
I'd like to find out about recessed shelving too. in that area when we do it, because to have the shelves that are flush with the walls so that you can set your different grooming tools or washing whatever you want, your sponges, your shampoos and things like that, they're not where a horse can bump into it and knock it down on the floor, and you try to pick it up and work with that. And so I'd like to look at that as well too. So.
It was nice to have two of them. Actually.
Oh, it was really nice because we were usually with someone and talking and working together, and it was fun. I think we're a tribe. We like to be together.
We do.
But, if it's just you, even if you have a small barn, you don't have to have a big barn to have something that's wonderful. We have seen the prettiest little small barns that are just perfect, and they're so effective. But if you have an area to wash or to groom, it does just help because it's kind of out of the way. You don't have to be in the aisle, but if it's your aisle, you can do it in your aisle. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have all of these things to have the most efficient barn in the world. So you can have the tiniest barn in the world, and it works.
So I would say, we had, like we were talking about, this is a huge barn. It was really big and beautiful, but actually the smaller barns that we had, we rode more.
Yeah.
And that was,
it
was just a season.
Humble, and you want your barn to be, you have an idea of what you want your barn to be, whether you want it to be peaceful or have, like when you go in there, it's a work time. You have your reasons, so you take your reasons for what you want with your barn. Maybe it's some people, you walk into their barn and you just never want to leave. It's just so peaceful. And other places you walk in and it's time to, go to work. So you make your barn the way that you want it to be. And the atmosphere of it, though, I think is the horses, of course, and the people that are in it make the atmosphere. So
another thing that we had was actual like grain room, just for the grain and the medicines and everything. We always had a hay room, and we always had the hay room and the grain and everything all in the same room. This time we had its own individual grain and medicine and notebooks and everything that we did for the horses, which was kind of nice to have too.
So the one thing I would say, and I just wrote an article about it, was actually making sure that your grain is in a secured place, because none of us want a horse to get out of their stall. I also said, as a seasonal stall check your latches on your doors. Be sure that they're secure. If you have a horse that is a Houdini that loves to get out, maybe you need to put some kind of a foolproof latch on that, or two latches. It just depends on your horse. But just to be sure that also too, other animals that come through in the night, you don't want any animals around your feet. You don't want them in your grain and so forth. So we did have a room to put our grain in. We had some good containers to put the grain in. In the past, I have actually had like a grain, like silo, not a silo, but actually like a grain bin to put it in that would be filled by the grain company. They would come and fill it, and we used that, and that was outside of the barn. That's another way to store. If you have several horses, it's a good way to use it. But if you don't go that route, but you buy in bulk, plastic containers. You can get a plastic container with a good lid on it that's hinged, or I know people that even use whatever containers that they find. People find a lot of different things in a lot of different places at good prices to put their grain in, to keep it dry, to keep it away from other animals, and to also protect it. You never want to lose horse to get into grain for colic and that type of thing. So this had its own containers and a door that closed, and all of the information, like we keep a daily log of when the horses are taken care of, what is done, who does what, if they had to give anything to the horses at the time, or somebody had a little cut or whatever, we keep track of all of that. And you don't have to be that detailed, but if you want to keep your warming schedule, if you want to keep your anything else that you want for your horses for their health, it's a good thing to do.
So the biggest part where my dad really went, crazy with the size of the arena. The arena was huge. It was another big
Oversized
space that, when you have the horses that are kind of uneasy, and you're uneasy and they're uneasy, and you're just beginning to work with them. It was a little too big until we got used to the horses. Then when we got used to them, they got used to us, and we did ride in there, and it was wonderful to have that big of a space.
So we're kind of like your average Joes in riding.
Yeah.
We're not professionals in the way of riding. We've shown, we have done all sorts of different things with our horses, but then if we get busy with our office, we don't ride for a bit. And I wish I could say that we are totally consistent, but we're not all the time. And then when we go to get back on, we feel like we're fresh again, which, we hope to be able to be more consistent once we get the barn built again. But we could take that indoor and we could shorten it up or whatever. We would either use a round pen and take the panels and use that, or we would use, a means of making it a little bit smaller. And then it helped. My husband wanted to have a room for more equipment at the end of the indoor. And then we had another building that was attached to the indoor as well, and he found out that building worked just fine for all the equipment. So we had an extra large indoor. But it was great for clinics, and when people came, we had plenty of room for seating and people, and it worked out fine.
Yeah.
We also heated it. We didn't have the heat on all the time, but we could take the edge off, and that was nice when we did. But you don't have to have that. I know plenty of people that don't do it. I know people that also have like the radiant heat. That works as well. And in our cold winters here, not everybody's in the cold, but here it gets a little cold. And I think for maybe at my age though, I like it. I like to have a little bit of heat when it gets really, really cold. Or sometimes for young riders, the little ones get cold quickly. But that helped a lot. Your footing's important. Everybody has their choice on footing. We talk about getting a faceted sand, one that doesn't wear down as quick. And there are lots and lots of different products and things for indoors. We didn't go with a fabricated product of any sort, but it worked out well for us. And one thing I would do differently though is that I would find out, we were looking at a system for watering the indoor. I would look at what kind of a system we could put in for watering the indoor down. We're so busy right now and with the office, which is great, but to have the time to go out and not have to water, or somebody that puts a sprinkler out there and moves it or forgets about it and there's a big puddle of water. We've all done that too, I'm sure, at one time or another. And so it's a good thing to think about, what are you going to do with your indoor footing? And lots of different choices.
And that's where our hashtag and our movement of Time to Ride came from, because even we need, time to ride, and we need the products that make it easier for us. And this is why we do the research and how all of these things have come to be, because we have little time sometimes. Some seasons are better and some seasons are shorter, and you just don't get the time to be able to do that. So
we want time to ride.
Yeah, we do.
We want time to ride.
Yeah.
As everybody does, unless you're able to schedule it. And there have been times where we have been able to schedule. This has just been a busier time for us, so we can't wait. And that's what we're hoping Ramm does for everybody too. The products that we carry and the tips that we offer, we hope it gives you more time to get out and just ride your horse. That's what it's all about. It's our passion. It's what we do.
So to sum everything up, what are the couple things that you're planning on doing for your new barn?
It's going to be exciting. I may even have to ask people to give me their ideas too, so that we can say that we put everything into the barn that we can. But, to be able to have that indoor again is big. So because of our winters, they can be very cold and icy or snowy. I hope to be able to have an indoor. It doesn't have to be big. I'd like to have it be more of a not as large, and a working space that's easy to work within. It can be small, but it needs to be efficient and effective. And then the ability to be able to, if we want to bring the horses in, be able to look at them, not be outside all the time with them. With the sheds, it's great. They love it. They do great with it. But for us, our convenience, to be able to have them come in. A tack room that's working and useful. Lighting, that's very important. The fans in the summer, if we need it, to offer that to the horses. And then
Thoroughbeds.
Yep. Pavers for the flooring so that it's not slippery. And also grooming mats, that type of thing. I know it sounds pretty simple, but we're just like everybody else. Our fencing is going to have to be laid out so that it's easy to get in and out of the barn. We want the shortest steps to go to turn our horses in and out. We don't want to have to walk long distances to turn the horses in and out. Personally, I don't. We just don't have the time. So those are some of the tips and key things. I know there's going to be others after we get done talking that'll be like, oh, but that'll be in another episode.
Yeah,
so,
we have much more to talk about because we had a couple more moves after that. So moving the horses a couple more times. And so there's even more to talk about and more, as we start to do some research, we can add on to what we're saying and what new things we found. So if anybody has anything new that they're loving, please let us know. And we'll look into that.
And we understand what it's like because we will tell our people that call in here all the time, like what we feel would work for them and say, we can give you these options. What do you think works best for you? And it's so easy for us. But now when we're in the hot seat and it's us, then we're like, what do we want to do? So there are so many options, but we will have it and we will tell you what we're going to do when we get to that point and then show you the building process. So it'll be fun.
All right. Well, stay tuned. We hope you enjoyed listening to our podcast and encourage you to share with all your equestrian family and friends. You can tune into the Late Night Riders podcast show every Friday night. Each episode will be uploaded exclusively on YouTube, where you can subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with all of our latest shows. Do you have a topic you'd like to discuss? We want to hear from you. You may email us at podcast@rammfence.com or feel free to leave a comment below. Thank you again for listening.